Millionaire pretends to be in the shower to test the gardener's son and breaks down at what she sees. Margaret Richardson watched from the second-floor window of her mansion in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, her heart tight with suspicion. For weeks, she had noticed that her things were being moved when she left for her weekly medical appointments. That Tuesday morning, she had decided to pretend she was taking a shower while secretly observing what really happened in her absence. The gardener's son, Tyler, an 11-year-old boy with a sweet look and dark skin, had arrived with his father, as he had been doing for 3 months, ever since Thomas started working for her. "Dad, you can leave. I'll wait here for you to finish outside," said Tyler to Thomas, who just nodded and headed toward the backyard garden. Margaret held her breath, hidden behind the curtain of the upper hallway. Now she would discover what that boy really did when he thought he was alone in her house. Her fingers trembled with nervousness as she watched his every move. Tyler looked around, making sure he was alone, and then walked over to the coffee table in the main room. Margaret felt her heart race. That was exactly where she always noticed her things out of place. The boy approached the crystal vase in the center of the table, where she usually placed artificial flowers. But what she saw next left her completely speechless. Instead of taking something, Tyler took 3 fresh salmon-colored roses from his school backpack, still with tiny dewdrops. With extreme care, he removed the dusty, artificial flowers and began arranging the natural roses in the vase, adjusting each one with the delicacy of an experienced florist. "There, now the house will be prettier for the lady," he whispered to himself, taking a step back to admire his work. Margaret had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. That was not what she expected to see. Tyler wasn't stealing anything. In fact, he was taking care of her house. The boy then went to the shelf where the family portraits were. With a small cloth he took from his pocket, he began carefully cleaning the glass of each picture frame. When he reached the photo of her with her late husband, Charles, taken during a trip to Europe 20 years ago, Tyler stopped for a longer moment. "You must have been very kind to her," he said softly, running his finger gently over the frame. "She seems so sad now. She needs someone to take care of her." The boy's words struck Margaret like lightning. How long had it been since anyone showed genuine concern for her? How long since someone cared enough to notice her sadness? Tyler continued his silent routine, going to the sideboard where the porcelain ornaments inherited from Margaret's mother-in-law were kept. One by one, he cleaned them with extreme care, putting each piece back exactly in the right place. When he finished, he took a small spray bottle he had brought and watered the plants in the room, the ones Margaret often forgot to care for. "You also need to feel loved," he said to the plants, as if they were his friends. Margaret could no longer hold back the tears that streamed silently down her face. That boy, the son of a simple man she barely knew, was taking care of her house with more affection than she herself had shown in years. The most touching part was yet to come. Tyler went back to the portraits and stopped again at the photo of her with Charles. This time, he knelt in front of the table and began to speak softly, as if in an intimate conversation. "Hi, Mr. Charles. It's me again, Tyler. Today I brought roses from Mrs. Dorothy's garden, our neighbor. She said fresh flowers make any house happier. Mrs. Margaret needs some joy, don't you think?" Margaret put her hand over her mouth to stifle a sob that wanted to escape. "My father said you were a very good man, that you took good care of her. Now that you're not here anymore, someone needs to keep taking care. I can do that, Mr. Charles. I can take care of the house so she doesn't feel so alone." The boy was silent for a few seconds, as if listening for an answer. Then he smiled and nodded at the photo. "You can count on me, Mr. Charles. I'll take good care of her." At that moment, the sound of something breaking echoed through the room. Tyler had accidentally bumped into a small glass vase that was on the corner of the table, and the pieces scattered across the marble floor. The look of panic that took over the boy's face broke Margaret's heart. "Oh my God," murmured Tyler, immediately kneeling to pick up the shards. "What a terrible thing I've done. You're going to be so upset with me." His small hands trembled as he carefully gathered each fragment, cutting his little finger in the process. A drop of blood dripped onto the floor, but he kept picking up the pieces with tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Mr. Charles. I promised I would take good care of your things, But I broke her vase. She's going to send my father away because of me. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Margaret could no longer stay hidden. She went down the stairs as quietly as she could and appeared in the doorway to the room. Tyler had his back turned, still picking up the last pieces, whispering apologies through tears. "Tyler," she said softly. The boy turned quickly, his eyes wide with fright and shame. His simple shirt was dusty and the cut finger left small drops of blood on the shards he held in his hand. "Mrs. Margaret," he stammered, jumping up. I can explain. I didn't mean to break anything. It was an accident. Please don't fire my father. I'll pay for the vase with my allowance money, I promise." The boy's voice was choked with desperation, and Margaret felt her chest tighten with emotion. Here was an 11-year-old child, more worried about the consequences his actions might bring for his father than about his own injury. "Tyler, my dear, let me see that cut finger," she said, approaching slowly so as not to frighten him further. "No, ma'am. It's nothing serious, really." He tried to hide his hand behind his back. "And I'll clean up all this mess. You won't even notice anything was broken here." Margaret knelt before him, coming to his level. Her eyes, normally cold and distrustful, were filled with a tenderness she herself had forgotten she possessed. "Tyler, I saw everything," she said calmly. The boy paled even more, if that was possible. "You saw?" His voice was almost a whisper. "I saw you arranging the flowers. I saw you cleaning the portraits. I saw you talking to the photo of my Charles." Tyler lowered his head, bracing for the worst. Tears were falling freely now, dripping onto the floor, along with the drops of blood from his cut finger. "I know I shouldn't touch your things without permission," he murmured. "But it's just that I saw you always sad at the window, and my father said sad people need extra care. I just wanted you to feel less alone." The pure sincerity in the boy's words completely disarmed Margaret. For a moment she couldn't say anything, just looked at that brave little boy who had decided, on his own, to care for a stranger's broken heart. "And why did you do it in secret, Tyler?" she asked, gently touching his shoulder. Because my father always taught me not to bother the employers. He says people like us should just do what we're told and leave quietly. But I saw that you were needing help, and I thought if you didn't know it wouldn't bother you." The humility and emotional wisdom of that 11-year-old boy were heartbreaking. Margaret took a tissue from her pocket and gently wiped the tears from his face. "Tyler, can you tell me where you got those flowers you always put here? Mrs. Dorothy, our neighbor, has a very beautiful garden. I asked if I could pick some flowers to cheer up the house of a very sad lady, and she always lets me. She said flowers are made to spread happiness. And what do you know about taking care of plants? My mom..." His voice faltered for a moment. "My mom taught me before she left. She said plants are like people. They need affection, water, and a little chat to feel loved." Margaret felt an even tighter squeeze in her chest. The housekeeper had vaguely mentioned that the boy had lost his mother recently, but she hadn't paid attention to the details at the time. "How long ago did your mother pass, Tyler?" "It'll be 8 months next week," he replied, wiping his nose with his shirt sleeve. "But the doctor said she didn't suffer, that she went in her sleep. Daddy cried a lot at first, but now he says she's watching over us from up above." The boy's simple words revealed a deep pain he carried, with an impressive maturity for his age. Margaret began to understand that the care he had dedicated to her house wasn't just random acts of kindness, but the way he had found to deal with his own loss. "Come here, let's take care of that cut," she said, standing up and extending her hand to him. Tyler hesitated for a moment, then accepted her hand. Together they went to the kitchen, where Margaret gently washed the cut on his finger and applied a bandage. It was the first time in years that she had physically cared for another person, and the sensation awakened something dormant within her. "Tyler, I need to tell you something," she said as she finished the bandage. "I wasn't taking a shower this morning. I was watching you from hiding." The boy looked at her, confused. "Why, ma'am?" "Because I thought you were messing with my things to take something. I was suspicious of you." Tyler processed the information in silence for a few seconds. then gave a sad smile. "You were right to be suspicious. My father always says employers have to be suspicious of employees, because not everyone is honest." The naturalness with which he accepted her suspicion without hurt or resentment touched Margaret deeply. That boy had been raised to accept that his social position would naturally put him under suspicion, and it made her feel ashamed of her own attitude. "No, Tyler, I was wrong, very wrong. You were taking care of my house better than I was, and I betrayed you with suspicion. But, Mom, if I were a bad person, you'd have been right to be suspicious. It's always better to be careful." The wisdom and generosity of that 11-year-old boy were humbling. Margaret realized how bitter and suspicious she had become over the years, especially after Charles's passing, while this boy who had lost his mother so recently still maintained a pure and generous heart. "Tyler, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, ma'am." "When you talk to the portrait of my Charles, what do you talk about?" The boy blushed slightly, as if caught doing something intimate. "Oh, I tell him about my day at school, talk about the flowers I brought, ask if he thinks you're a little less sad. And sometimes I ask him for advice." "What kind of advice?" "How to make you smile, how to take better care of the house, whether it's right for me to worry so much about a person I don't even really know." Margaret had to lean on the kitchen sink to keep from falling. The boy's words held a brutal honesty that struck her straight in the heart. "And what do you think Charles would answer?" Tyler thought for a moment, with the seriousness of someone much older. "I feel he's happy when I take care of the things that were important to him, and that he wants someone to keep making you feel loved, even though he's not here anymore to do it himself." At that moment, Margaret could no longer hold back her tears. All the walls she had built around her heart in the last 3 years, since Charles's departure, came crashing down at once. Here was an 11-year-old boy who understood the language of love and care better than many adults she knew. "Tyler, does your father know you do these things here inside the house?" "No, Mum. He thinks I just sit around waiting for him to finish his work outside. If he finds out, he'll be mad at me for bothering you." "And do you think you're bothering me?" "I don't know, Mum. I hope not. I just wanted to help." Margaret took a deep breath. A decision was taking shape in her mind, something she hadn't done for many years. A decision based on the heart, not on reason. "Tyler, I want you to keep doing exactly what you were doing, but this time you don't have to do it in secret, and I will talk to your father to explain everything." The boy's eyes lit up in a way she hadn't seen in human eyes for a long time. "You really mean it? And you won't fire my dad?" "Not only will I not fire your dad, but I'm going to propose something new for both of you." At that moment, Thomas appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face sweaty from his work in the garden, and a worried expression on his face. "Tyler, what are you doing in the kitchen?" he asked, looking alternately at his son and at Margaret. "Mrs. Margaret, I apologize if my son bothered you. He can be very curious sometimes." Margaret looked at the gardener, a man of about 40, with calloused hands and an honest gaze. It was the first time she had really paid attention to him as a person, not just as an employee. "Thomas, I need to talk to you about something very important," she said. "But first, tell me about your situation at home." Thomas seemed surprised and a little uncomfortable with the personal question. "Our situation, ma'am? Well, it hasn't been easy since my wife left, but we're managing. Tyler is a good boy. He helps at home and does well in school." "And where do you live?" "We rent a room in the back of Mrs. Dorothy's house. It's not much, but it's enough for the 2 of us." "Thomas, your son is a very special boy. Much more special than you imagine." The gardener looked at Tyler, trying to understand what had happened. "Did he do something wrong, Mrs. Margaret? Because if he did, I can assure you that—" "No, Thomas. He did something right. Very right." And then Margaret told him everything. She told him about her suspicions, about how she decided to secretly observe Tyler, about all the loving care the boy had dedicated to the house, about the conversations with Charles's portrait, about the genuine concern he showed for her. As she spoke, she saw Thomas's expressions change from confusion to surprise, from surprise to pride, and from pride to a deep emotion that made his eyes fill with tears. "Tyler," Thomas said when Margaret finished, "is this true, son? You've been doing these things?" The boy nodded timidly. "Why, Tyler? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you always say we shouldn't be a bother to our employers, Dad. I just wanted the lady not to feel as alone as we felt in the beginning, when Mom left." The simplicity of the explanation touched all three of them deeply. There was the pure empathy of a child, recognizing pain in another person and deciding to do something to alleviate it. "Thomas, I have a proposal for you," Margaret said. "But first, I need you to understand that this is not charity. It's an offer based on what Tyler has already been doing and what I've observed in the character of you both." The gardener stiffened slightly. As a proud and hard-working man, he had always been wary of offers that seemed like handouts. "What kind of proposal, Mrs. Margaret?" "Tyler has shown a natural talent for taking care of a home, for making spaces beautiful and welcoming. I want to hire him officially as my assistant for decoration and the internal care of the house. A fair wage for work he's already been doing masterfully." Both Thomas and Tyler were speechless. "But, Ma'am," Thomas stammered, "he's just a child. He has to study, play." "Exactly. That's why it would only be on weekends and some afternoons during the week, always respecting school and study hours. And with one special condition. I want Tyler to teach me how to take care of my own home in the caring way he's been doing it." The proposal was revolutionary for all of them. Margaret was not only offering work to Tyler, but asking to learn from him. It was a complete inversion of the traditional employer-employee dynamic. "I don't know what to say," Thomas murmured. "Say you accept," Margaret smiled for the first time in months, "because I need both of you. Tyler taught me today that I had forgotten how to care and how to be cared for, and that is something priceless." Tyler looked at his father with hope in his eyes. "Dad, can I accept? I promise it won't interfere with school." Thomas looked at his son, at Margaret, and then back at his son. He was clearly conflicted between the pride of seeing Tyler valued and the worry of not wanting the boy to grow up too fast. "If you're sure this is what you want, Mom, and if Tyler promises he won't forget to be a child—" "I promise, Dad, and I promise I'll keep helping you with everything at home too." "Then it's accepted," Thomas said, extending his hand to Margaret. When she shook his hand, Margaret felt she was starting not just a new work arrangement, but a new phase of her life, a phase where the walls she had built around herself could finally begin to come down. In the following days, the dynamic of the mansion changed completely. Tyler began arriving an hour earlier on the agreed days, no longer to do his work in secret, but to work officially alongside Margaret. The first lesson was about arranging flowers. Tyler brought roses of different colors from Mrs. Dorothy's garden, who had been moved to learn that her flowers were helping to heal a broken heart. "Mom always said that each flower color says something different," Tyler explained, as he taught Margaret how to cut the stems at the right angle. "Pink is for affection, red is for strong love, white is for peace, yellow is for friendship. And which color do you think I need most right now?" Margaret asked. Tyler stopped cutting and looked at her thoughtfully. "I think you need a little of every color, but mostly pink, because affection is what makes us feel less alone." The boy's emotional wisdom continued to surprise Margaret. In his small hands, the flowers seemed to come to life, and she realized how she had lost the ability to appreciate simple beauties. "Tyler, will you teach me how to talk to the plants too?" she asked, feeling a little silly but genuinely curious. "Of course," his eyes shone. "Mom said plants are like very shy people. They hear everything but only respond through the beauty they create for us. And there in the living room of a millionaire's mansion, a 55-year-old businesswoman learned from an 11-year-old boy how to whisper affectionate words to her plants. It was the first time in years she had done something seemingly without practical purpose, just for the pleasure of caring. "Oh, little plant, you look very pretty today," she said timidly to a fern she had neglected for months. "Just like that," Tyler applauded. "Now she knows you care about her." And strangely, Margaret swore she saw the fern's leaves move slightly, as if dancing with joy. Tyler's lessons weren't limited to plant care and decoration. He was also teaching Margaret to see her own house with different eyes. Did you know that when we tidy the house thinking about the people who live in it, the house becomes happier? He asked while they organized the library. How so, Tyler? Like this. When I arrange the books, I think about how you like to read, so I leave the ones you read more often closer to your favorite armchair. And when I clean the portraits, I talk to the people in the photos so they remember how happy they were that day. Margaret stopped organizing the books and looked at the boy. You really talk to the people in the portraits? Yes, I do. It's not strange. My dad talks to my mom every day before sleeping. He says love doesn't disappear when a person leaves, it just changes place. The emotional depth of Tyler's words left Margaret silent. That boy had found a healthy way to deal with loss that she herself had never managed to achieve. Tyler, can you teach me to talk to Mr. Charles too? The boy's face lit up. Of course. Want to try now? Together, they approached her portrait with Mr. Charles. Margaret felt strange at first, but Tyler's reassuring presence encouraged her. You can start by telling him about your day, Tyler whispered. Hi, Charles, she began hesitantly. Today I learned to talk to plants. I know you'd think that's silly, but it was nice. Now tell him something you learned from him, Tyler suggested. Charles, remember when you used to tell me I was too serious, that I needed to learn to play? I think today I started to understand what you meant. To her surprise, talking to the portrait didn't make her feel crazy or sad. Instead, it brought a sense of peace, as if Mr. Charles were really there, approving her new discoveries. Do you feel better? Tyler asked. Much better. Thank you for teaching me this. You're welcome. Now Mr. Charles knows you're learning to be happy again. I'm sure he's proud. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Week after week, the relationship between Margaret and Tyler deepened. What had started as a work arrangement was turning into something much more meaningful for both of them. One day, Tyler arrived quieter than usual. Margaret immediately noticed something was different. What happened, Tyler? Are you sad? It's not sadness, Mrs. Margaret. It's just... Yesterday was 9 months since my mum left, and I still miss her a lot. The simple honesty with which he expressed his feelings touched Margaret deeply. She realized that, in the 3 years since Mr. Charles's departure, she had never allowed herself to speak so openly about her own longing. You know, Tyler, I also miss Mr. Charles very much. Sometimes I wake up and for a second I forget he's not here anymore. That's exactly how I feel. Tyler's eyes lit up with the recognition of someone who finally understood. Sometimes I go to tell Mommy something and remember she can't answer anymore. And how do you deal with that when it happens? I tell her anyway, he said simply. Then I make up what her answer would be, based on what I remember about her. It works almost the same. Once again, Tyler had found a healthy emotional strategy that Margaret had never considered. The capacity that boy had to transform pain into active love was extraordinary. Tyler, can you teach me how to do that too? Of course. Want to try now? Margaret approached the portrait with Charles again, but this time she felt more confident. Charles, today I learned something new from Tyler. I learned that missing someone doesn't have to be just sadness. It can be love that keeps happening in a different way. She paused, imagining what his response would be. He would say, she continued, smiling slightly, that it was about time I stopped being stubborn and accepted help to be happy. Tyler clapped softly. Perfect. Now you're really talking to him. And truly, for the first time in 3 years, Margaret felt she was connecting again with the good memories of Charles, instead of just carrying the weight of his absence. From that day on, their afternoons together gained a new dimension. Besides learning together about household care, they shared stories about Charles and about Tyler's mother. Margaret discovered that Susan, Thomas's late wife, had been an elementary school teacher before she got sick. She's the one who taught me to read, Tyler said proudly. Even when she got very weak, she always found the strength to help me with my homework. What's your favorite subject in school? English. I like writing stories. Mommy always said I had a writer's imagination. Have you written any stories lately? Tyler blushed a little. I'm writing a story about a very rich lady who lived alone in a big house until she met a boy who taught her that a house is only truly happy when people are inside it taking care of each other. The obvious description of her own situation made Margaret laugh for the first time in months, a genuine laugh from deep in her chest. And how does that story end? I haven't decided yet, but I think it ends with the lady discovering that she also knew how to take care of people. She had just forgotten how to do it. Tyler's emotional perception of her journey was almost frighteningly accurate. That boy was documenting, through fiction, the real transformation she was living. Tyler, can I read your story when you finish? Really? You really want to read it? I really do, and maybe you could teach me to write too. You want to learn to write stories? I want to learn to write about feelings. You're very good at that. And so on Thursdays, Tyler began giving creative writing lessons to Margaret. It was a complete reversal of traditional roles, a millionaire businesswoman learning from an 11-year-old boy about how to express emotions on paper. The first thing Mommy taught me about writing, Tyler explained, is that you have to write with your heart, not just with your head. How so? Like this. If you want to write about sadness, you have to remember a time you were really sad, then write not just what happened, but how your chest felt heavy, how your throat tightened, things like that. Margaret tried to apply his advice, writing about the day Charles passed away. For the first time, she didn't just describe the medical and practical facts, but also her physical and emotional sensations, and to her surprise, writing about the pain made her feel relief, not more suffering. Tyler, that technique your mother taught is very powerful. I feel lighter after writing. It's because we can't keep feelings locked inside us. They need to come out, right? So writing is like a safe place for them to be. Once again, the boy's emotional wisdom impressed her. At 11 years old, he had already learned emotional processing strategies that many adults never discover. As the months passed, Margaret's house transformed completely, not just physically with the fresh flowers and loving care that Tyler brought, but energetically. There was a lightness in the air that hadn't existed for years. Thomas also began to notice changes in his employer. She greeted them both with genuine smiles, asked about personal matters, showed real interest in their well-being. One day, he approached Margaret with a concerned expression. "Mrs. Margaret, may I speak with you about something?" "Of course, Thomas. What is it?" "It's about Tyler. I'm happy to see him so excited about working here, but I worry he might be getting too attached. He talks about you all the time at home." Margaret understood his concern. A single father, raising a son who had lost his mother, would naturally worry about intense emotional bonds the boy might develop. "Thomas, can I be honest with you about something?" "Please." "Tyler isn't getting attached to me anymore, then I am getting attached to him. That boy brought me back to life in a way I didn't think was possible anymore." Thomas seemed surprised by her frankness. "How so, ma'am?" "For 3 years after I lost my husband, I completely isolated myself. I didn't receive visitors. I didn't leave the house except for medical appointments. I didn't care about anything. Tyler taught me to care and to be cared for again." "Are you saying my son helped you?" "I'm saying your son saved me," she said simply. "And now I want to repay that care somehow." Thomas was silent for a moment, processing her words. "Do you have any idea how to do that?" Margaret took a deep breath. There was a proposal she had been thinking about for weeks, but she didn't know how to bring it up without seeming invasive. "Actually, I have an idea, but I need to talk to both of you together." That afternoon, when Tyler arrived from school, Margaret called them for a talk in the living room, the same place where, months earlier, she had secretly observed the boy's loving care. "Tyler, your father told me you talk a lot about our work here when you get home." "I do," he replied enthusiastically. "I really like working with you. We have fun arranging the flowers and talking with Mr. Charles. And you, Thomas, how do you feel knowing Tyler likes coming here so much?" "I'm happy to see him excited, but I confess I sometimes worry if it's not too much work for you." "It's not work, Thomas, it's companionship. And that's what I want to talk to you about." She paused for a moment, organizing her thoughts. "This house is too big for one person, and you're paying rent for a small room. What if you moved in here? Both Thomas and Tyler were speechless. "What do you mean, ma'am?" Thomas stammered. "I have 3 empty rooms on the 2nd floor. You would have your own space, total privacy, and Tyler wouldn't have to travel to come work with me anymore. It would be good for everyone." The proposal was bold, but Margaret had thought it through carefully. It wasn't just generosity, it was a real need she had discovered in herself to have companionship in the big, empty house. "But Mrs. Margaret," Thomas protested, "we can't afford rent in a house like this." "I'm not talking about rent. I'm talking about a fair exchange. You would continue with the work you already do. Tyler would keep helping me with the indoor care of the house, and I would gain company. It would be an arrangement that benefits everyone." Tyler looked at his father with obvious hope in his eyes. "Dad, do you think we can accept?" Thomas was clearly conflicted. On one hand, the offer would solve many practical and financial problems. On the other, his pride as a working man made him hesitate to accept something that seemed too generous. "Thomas," Margaret said, noticing his hesitation, "I'm not offering this out of charity. I'm offering it because I discovered I need you here. This house was killing me with loneliness until Tyler came into my life. Are you sure it wouldn't be an inconvenience?" "I'm sure it would be the opposite of an inconvenience. It would be healing." Margaret's emotional honesty finally broke through Thomas's resistance. He could see in her eyes that she wasn't giving charity, but expressing a genuine need. "If you're sure, and if Tyler promises he'll keep behaving well at school." "I promise, Dad, and I promise I'll help even more around the house." "Then it's accepted," Thomas said, extending his hand to Margaret. When she shook his hand for the 2nd time in a few months, Margaret knew she was not only sealing an agreement, but beginning a new chapter of her life. A chapter where she would no longer be the lonely widow, living isolated in an empty mansion, but part of a chosen family, united by affection and mutual care. The move happened the following week. Tyler was ecstatic to see his new room, much larger than the cubicle they shared at Mrs. Dorothy's house. Margaret had made a point of decorating the space with an 11-year-old boy's tastes in mind, but keeping an elegant touch that matched the rest of the house. "Mrs. Margaret, can I put the pictures of my mum here on the dresser?" Tyler asked timidly. "Of course you can. This is your home now, Tyler. You can decorate it however you want." Seeing Tyler carefully arranging the pictures of his mother in his new room brought an intense emotion to Margaret. That boy was truly making that space his home, bringing his history and his memories into her house. Thomas had chosen the room next to his son's, and Margaret noticed how he also seemed more relaxed, without the constant pressure of worrying about rent and basic bills. "Mrs. Margaret," he said on their first morning in the house, "I don't know how to repay so much generosity." "Thomas, you repay it by caring for the garden in the loving way you always have, and by allowing Tyler to keep teaching me about life." "What do you mean, teaching about life?" "Your son has an emotional wisdom I had lost long ago. He taught me to talk to plants, to speak with pictures of loved ones, to write about feelings. Those are lessons that are priceless." Thomas smiled proudly. Susan always said Tyler had a special heart. She called him our little healer of broken hearts. Your wife was right. Tyler really did heal my broken heart. The house's daily routine took on a completely new dynamic. Mornings began with shared breakfast, where Tyler would talk about the dreams he'd had, and Margaret would share the plans for the day. Thomas would go out to tend the garden, Tyler would go to school, and Margaret began using the hours alone to practice the plant care the boy had taught her. It was a way to maintain the connection with him, even when he was away. In the afternoons, when Tyler returned from school, they continued their house care sessions and writing lessons. But now there was also time for deeper conversations, for Margaret to get to know the boy's personality and dreams better. "Tyler, what do you want to be when you grow up?" she asked one day. "I want to be a writer," he answered without hesitation. "I want to write stories that help sad people become happy again." "What kind of stories?" "Stories about people who think they're alone, but then discover there's always someone ready to take care of them, if they let them." Once again, Tyler's perspective on life surprised her. At 11 years old, he had already identified his life's mission: to use art to heal others' emotional wounds. Do you think I could help you achieve this dream? Tyler's eyes sparkled. How, Mrs. Margaret? Well, I know some people in the publishing world. When you finish your stories, maybe I could introduce them to people who understand the subject. You would really do that? I would do it with great pride, but first, you need to keep studying and writing. Talent without preparation doesn't take anyone far. Tyler nodded energetically. I will study hard, and I will keep writing every day. Seeing the determination in the boy's eyes filled Margaret with a maternal pride she didn't know she could feel. For the first time in her life, she was investing in someone else's future, and the feeling was deeply rewarding. Dinners became the most special moment of the day. The three would sit at the kitchen table. Margaret had abandoned the formal dining room in favor of the cozier kitchen environment, and they would share not just food, but stories from the day. Tyler always had some school adventure to tell. Thomas talked about discoveries in the garden, and Margaret began to share memories of her life with Charles, something she hadn't done in years. Charles loved gardening, she told them one evening. He said that working with soil was the best therapy for life's problems. Just like my dad, Tyler exclaimed. Dad, Mrs. Margaret said her husband liked plants too. It's true, Mr. Charles was right, Thomas agreed. Soil has healing power. When Susan got sick, I would spend hours tending the garden so I wouldn't go crazy with worry. The naturalness with which everyone began to talk about their losses, without drama or excessive melancholy, created an environment of collective healing. Each had gone through grief. Each had found different ways to deal with the pain, and together they were learning that it was possible to honor the memory of those who had passed without being trapped in sadness. One evening, Margaret had an idea that particularly excited her. Tyler, what if we made a special garden for your mother and for Charles? How do you mean, Mom? A flower bed dedicated to their memories, where we could plant their favorite flowers and have a beautiful place to talk to them. Tyler's face lit up completely. Can I plant white daisies? They were Mom's favorite flower. And I'll plant red roses, which Charles always gave me on our wedding anniversary. Thomas smiled, seeing the excitement of the two. I can help prepare the soil. It would be an honor to care for such a special garden. And so the Memory Garden was born, a circular flower bed located in the most beautiful area of the property, where carefully chosen flowers would grow as living symbols of the love that remains even after the physical farewell. The work in the garden became a family project. Every weekend, the three would dedicate themselves to caring for the new little plants, always talking about Charles and Susan as if they were present, not absent. I think Mom is liking the daisies, Tyler said one Saturday, observing how the flowers had grown beautiful and lush. And Charles's roses have a wonderful scent, Margaret added. I think he approves of our partnership. They must be happy to see you two taking care of each other, Thomas observed wisely. And truly there was something deeply comforting in that ritual of shared care. The garden became not just a memorial, but a symbol of the new family the three had built together. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. As the months passed, Margaret began to notice changes in herself that went beyond the companionship and affection she received from Tyler and Thomas. She was rediscovering aspects of her personality she had buried along with Charles. For example, she had always enjoyed cooking, but after becoming a widow, she had started eating only ready-made or take-out food. With Tyler and Thomas in the house, she returned to preparing home-cooked meals, not out of obligation but for pleasure. Mrs. Margaret, you cook so well, Tyler would always praise. The food tastes like care. It's that I'm cooking with love again, she replied, surprising herself with her own words. Tyler was also flourishing in unexpected ways. With more stability at home and the intellectual stimulation he received from Margaret, his grades at school improved significantly. But more important than that, he was developing a self-confidence he hadn't possessed before. The teacher asked if I want to participate in the school essay contest. He excitedly shared one day. And do you want to? Margaret asked. I really do. I'm going to write about families that aren't by blood, but are by heart. The theme Tyler had chosen was clearly inspired by his own life experience. Margaret felt honored to be part of the story that had inspired the first official work of the future writer. "Can I read your essay before you turn it in?" "Of course, and if you have any suggestions, I'll take them." When Tyler brought the essay for her to read, Margaret was moved by the maturity and sensitivity of the text. The boy had written about a family built with choices of the heart, describing how people who had lost loved ones could find in each other the continuation of the love they thought was lost forever. "Tyler, this is wonderful," she said with teary eyes. "You have a real talent for touching hearts through words. Do you think I can win?" "I think you've already won, regardless of the result. You put your soul on paper, and that's what every real writer does." The contest took place 3 weeks later, and Tyler won first place. When he came running home with the certificate in hand, Margaret felt a maternal pride so intense it startled her. "Dad, Mrs. Margaret, I won! I won!" he shouted, dancing around the house. "My son, I'm so proud." Thomas hugged him tightly. "Tyler, I knew you would win." Margaret also hugged him, surprised by the naturalness of the maternal gesture. That night, they had an impromptu celebration. Margaret prepared Tyler's favorite chocolate cake. Thomas brought special flowers from the garden to decorate the table, and Tyler wrote and read a thank you speech that made everyone cry. "I want to thank my mom, who taught me to love words," he began. "For my dad, who taught me that hard work and a good heart are the most important treasures we can have. And for my heart family, Mrs. Margaret, who showed me that 2 sad people can become a happy family when they decide to care for each other." Tyler's impromptu speech was more eloquent than many professional speeches Margaret had heard at corporate events. At 11 years old, that boy already mastered the art of expressing deep feelings with touching simplicity. After the party, when Tyler had already gone to sleep, Margaret and Thomas stayed talking in the kitchen, drinking tea and enjoying the tranquility of the night. "Thomas, I need to thank you for something," she said. "Thank me for what, Mrs. Margaret?" "For raising such a special son. Tyler changed my life completely." Thomas smiled with a mix of pride and melancholy. "Susan always said Tyler was born with the gift of caring for people. She said he was our gift to the world. Your wife was right. Tyler truly is a gift. And so are you, Thomas." "How so?" "You taught me that it's possible to be strong and gentle at the same time, that it's possible to work hard without losing tenderness, that it's possible to raise a child alone without letting bitterness take over." Thomas was moved by her words. "Mrs. Margaret, you changed our lives too. Tyler has a stability and a joy that I couldn't give him alone. And I have hope for the future again." "How so?" "After Susan was gone, I could only think about the day-to-day, about surviving one more day, taking care of Tyler one more day. But now I can make plans, dream about my son's future, imagine good things happening." Thomas's emotional honesty touched Margaret deeply. She realized she hadn't just found a new family, but had helped heal the broken hearts of 2 people who were as important to her as she had become to them. "You know, Thomas, I have a confession to make." "What confession?" "When you moved in here, I said it was because I needed company. But the truth is, I needed you in a way I didn't even understand at the time." "How so?" "I needed to be useful in someone's life again. I needed a reason to wake up every day that wasn't just existing. You gave me purpose again." Thomas thought for a moment before answering. "Mrs. Margaret, can I say something that might be bold of me?" "Of course." "I think Susan and Mr. Charles met up there and decided to bring our families together. It's too much of a coincidence for things to have fit together so perfectly." The idea was romantic and unlikely, but it brought a smile to Margaret's face. "You know, I've thought about that too, especially when I see how well Tyler and I understand each other. It's as if we've known each other for a long time. It's as if we were always a family. We just didn't know it yet." And truly, the naturalness with which the 3 had fit together was remarkable. There was no awkwardness or strangeness, only a harmony that seemed to have always existed. Months later, the life of the improvised family had found a perfect rhythm. Tyler continued to excel in school and develop his literary talents. Thomas had taken on increasing responsibilities, in caring for the property, demonstrating management skills Margaret hadn't expected, and she herself had gotten involved again with some social activities, always accompanied by her new family. One day, Tyler came with a proposal that surprised everyone. "Mrs. Margaret, I had an idea for a special project." "What kind of project?" "We could organize a party here at the house and invite other people who are alone, just like we were before. Then we could show them it's possible to build a new family." The idea was typical of Tyler's generous heart, to multiply the happiness he had found by sharing it with others in need. "Tyler, that's a wonderful idea, but how will we find these people? I know a lady at school, Mrs. Barbara, who works in the library. She always gets sad when she talks about living alone. And there's Mr. Walter, the man who takes care of the square near here. He always talks to me when I go to school, and one day he told me his children live far away." Tyler's ability to perceive others' loneliness and want to do something about it continued to surprise Margaret. That boy had developed an extraordinary social sensitivity. And what would this party be like? "We'd make a really nice lunch, show our house, tell our story. Then maybe other people might feel inspired to build a heart family too." Thomas showed enthusiasm for his son's idea. "Tyler, are you thinking of teaching other people what we learned here?" "That's right, Dad. We learned that family isn't just those born together. It's those who choose to stay together and care for each other." Margaret was moved by the maturity of the proposal. "Tyler, we will have this party, but we'll do it with a lot of preparation, so it's really special for everyone." And so began the preparations for what Tyler named the Heart Family Party. For 2 weeks, the three of them dedicated themselves to planning every detail. The menu, the decorations, the activities, and most importantly, how to share their story in a way that would inspire others without seeming presumptuous. Tyler took charge of personally inviting each person he had identified as lonely. His childlike and sincere approach made everyone accept the invitation with curiosity and gratitude. Margaret took care of the food, preparing dishes that represented the blend of affection she had learned from Tyler and the sophistication of her previous culinary education. Each dish would be a practical demonstration of how simple care can become gestures of deep love. Thomas transformed the garden into a perfect setting for the celebration, with special floral arrangements and cozy spaces for intimate conversations. On the day of the party, 8 people arrived. Mrs. Barbara, the 62-year-old widowed librarian; Mr. Walter, the 70-year-old retiree whose children lived in other states; Mrs. Linda, a retired teacher whom Tyler met at the bakery and always seemed melancholic; Mr. Richard, an elderly shopkeeper who had recently lost his wife; and 4 more people whom the first guests brought as companions. The lunch was an absolute success. The initially shy people soon opened up in the welcoming atmosphere the 3 hosts created. Tyler moved among the guests like a little ambassador of joy, telling stories and making everyone laugh. But the most special moment was when Margaret, Thomas, and Tyler told their story. Without dramatizing or over-sentimentalizing, they explained how 3 people who had lost important parts of their original families had found each other and built a new way of being a family. "The most important thing we learned," Tyler said to the guests, "is that love doesn't end when a person leaves. It stays inside us looking for a way to keep on caring. So when we find other people who also have love stuck inside them, we can join these loves and make a new family." Tyler's simple and profound explanation touched everyone present. Mrs. Barbara began to cry silently, and Mr. Walter offered to comfort her, starting a conversation that would last for hours. By the end of the afternoon, when the guests said goodbye, several contacts had been exchanged, and at least 3 solid friendships had been born. More importantly, some people who arrived alone left with plans to meet again. "Tyler, your party was a complete success," Margaret said as they tidied up the last dishes. "You achieved exactly what you wanted, to show other people that it's possible to build a new family." "Do you think they really understood?" "I'm sure. Mainly because we didn't just talk about it, we showed how it is in practice." Thomas embraced his son with pride. "My son, you have a heart of gold. Your mother would be so proud to see the good man you're becoming." "And Mr. Charles would be proud to see how you taught me to believe in human kindness again," Margaret added. That night, the three talked at length about how the party had been important not only for the guests but for themselves. Sharing their story had further solidified their certainty that they had built something truly special together. Weeks after the party, they received wonderful news. Mrs. Barbara and Mr. Walter had started a friendship that quickly turned into companionship. They began meeting daily for walks and conversations, and both reported a significant improvement in their feelings of loneliness. Mrs. Linda had formed a book club with 2 other guests from the party, and they met weekly at the library where Mrs. Barbara worked. The group grew and became an official library activity, benefiting the whole community. "Look what we started," Tyler said, excited by the news. "The Hart family is spreading." And indeed, the results of the party had created a kind of community movement. People who once lived in isolation now connected regularly, creating a network of emotional support that benefited everyone. Inspired by the initiative's success, Margaret had a new idea. "Tyler, what if we organize these parties regularly, like once a month?" "Really? You want to do it more often?" "I do. And more than that, I want you to be my official partner in this project." "Partner, how?" "I want us to set up an organization to help lonely people build new family connections. You would be responsible for the creative and relationship part. I would handle the administrative and financial side." The proposal elevated Tyler from a caring child to an official partner in a meaningful social project. It was a formal recognition of the value of his ideas and his ability to execute them. "Dad, can I accept?" Tyler looked at Thomas hopefully. "Son, it would be an honor, but you have to promise you won't forget to study and to be a kid too." "I promise, and I promise I'll use all this as inspiration to write even better stories." And so the Hart Family Project was born, an initiative that began with an 11-year-old boy's improvised party and transformed into an organization that monthly brought lonely people together to create new family connections. Margaret used part of her business experience to structure the project efficiently, while Tyler became the creative heart of the initiative, always proposing new activities and innovative ways to bring people together. Thomas, in turn, discovered he had a talent for logistics and organization, taking care of all the practical details that made the events run perfectly. 1 year after the first party, the project had benefited over 200 people and created dozens of new Hart families in the community. Tyler had written a small book about the experience, which Margaret helped publish independently. The book, titled "How to Build Family with the Hart," became a local and then a regional success. Tyler, at 12 years old, was already recognized as a promising young author and social activist. "Tyler, do you realize you're changing the lives of hundreds of people?" Margaret asked one day. "We're changing them, Mrs. Margaret. You, me, and my dad. We've become a team." "You're right. We really are a team. The best team I've ever been a part of." And truly, the partnership among the three had become a transformative force, not only in their own lives, but in the entire community. They had demonstrated that family is a choice of the heart, not just an accident of genetics. The project continued to grow. They were invited to give lectures in other cities. Tyler was interviewed by newspapers and magazines as an example of youth social engagement, and Margaret rediscovered her life's purpose through meaningful social work. But most importantly, the three remained united as a family. Every night they still had dinner together in the kitchen. Every weekend they still tended to the memory garden together, and Tyler still talked daily to the portraits of Mr. Charles and his mother, now including them in updates about the social project. "Mr. Charles," he said one night to the portrait, "Mrs. Margaret has become a completely different person from the one you left. She now laughs every day, cares for hundreds of people, and has a new family to care for her too. You must be very proud." And truly, if Charles could see Margaret at that moment, he would certainly be surprised and proud of her transformation. The bitter, isolated woman had become a generous, maternal, and socially engaged person. 2 years after the day Margaret decided to secretly watch what Tyler was doing in her house, she was completely transformed. Not just externally, though the constant smile and renewed energy were evident, but mainly internally. "You know, Tyler," she said one afternoon while organizing materials for the project's next event, "I used to think my life was over when Charles was gone. Now I understand it was just paused waiting for you all to arrive to start again. And I thought I would always be sad after my mommy was gone," Tyler replied. "But I learned that you can be sad and happy at the same time. Sad for the person who left, but happy for the new family that arrived." The emotional maturity Tyler had developed continued to surprise everyone who knew him. At 12 years old, he had already learned one of life's hardest lessons, that pain and joy can coexist, and that one does not cancel out the other. Thomas, who had undergone his own quiet transformation, now felt confident enough to start making long-term plans that included his new family. "Mrs. Margaret," he said one evening, "I have a somewhat bold question to ask." "Go ahead, Thomas. Have you ever thought about adopting Tyler officially?" The question took Margaret by surprise, not because the idea was strange, but because she herself had thought about it many times without the courage to suggest it. "Why are you asking that?" "Because I see how you love each other. I see how he treats you like a mother, how you treat him like a son. And I think it would be good for him to have that official security too." "And would you be willing to share his parenthood with me?" "Mrs. Margaret, I wouldn't be sharing anything. I'd be gaining a partner to raise my son in the best way possible." The conversation that followed was one of the most important of their lives. They discussed practical, emotional, and legal aspects of the adoption, but mainly they talked about what it would mean to make official something that had already existed in practice for months. "Shall we ask Tyler what he thinks?" Margaret suggested. "Good idea, but I think I already know what his answer will be." When they presented the proposal to Tyler the next day, his reaction was even more enthusiastic than they expected. "Really? Mrs. Margaret can become my official mother too?" His eyes shone with joy. "If you want, Tyler, you would have two parents, your father Thomas and your mother Margaret. And can I still love my mommy who's gone?" "Of course you can," Margaret answered tenderly. "Love doesn't have a quantity limit. You can love your mother who's gone and your mother who's here. They don't compete, they complement each other. Then I really want to. I want to have a complete family again." The adoption process was relatively simple, considering that Thomas was not only consenting, but actively encouraging it. In 6 months, the paperwork was ready, and Margaret officially became Tyler's legal mother. The adoption finalization ceremony was small, but deeply moving. Tyler had written a speech for the occasion, which he read to the judge, to Margaret, and to Thomas. "Today is not the day I got a new mother. Today is the day the law finally recognized what my heart has known for a long time, that Mrs. Margaret is my heart mother, and that a real family is the one we choose with love, not just the one we get by the accident of birth." There wasn't a dry eye in the room when Tyler finished speaking. The judge, an experienced man who had presided over hundreds of adoptions, commented that it was one of the most touching declarations he had ever heard. Leaving the courthouse, the three hugged in a silent, profound celebration. They had made official something that already existed, but the formal act brought a sense of completeness and security that none of them had anticipated. "Now we are officially the Richardson family," Margaret said, referring to the combination of last names that Tyler had chosen to use. "The first family in the United States formed by the Hart Family Project," Tyler added, laughing. "And the happiest family I've ever been a part of," Thomas concluded. That night they threw a party at home to celebrate. They invited all the people who had benefited from the project over the years, turning the personal celebration into a big gathering of the community they had helped create. During the party, Tyler gave another speech, this time addressed to the guests. 2 years ago, I was a sad boy who had lost his mother and lived in a small room with my dad. Mrs. Margaret was a sad lady who lived alone in a big house. My father was a sad man who worked just to survive another day. Today we are a complete and happy family, and we have created a project that has already helped hundreds of people build their own heart families." He paused for a moment, looking at all the faces present. "We learned that sadness is not forever, that loneliness has a cure, and that love always finds a way to multiply. If you are here today, it's because you believe that too. And if you believe that, then you will keep spreading Heart Family out there. Tyler's speech received a warm ovation. At 13, he had already become an inspiring speaker and a natural community leader. Later that night, after all the guests had left, Margaret, Thomas and Tyler sat in the garden, watching the stars and reflecting on the extraordinary journey they had shared. "Do you think we really changed other lives, or do we just feel that way?" Margaret asked. "We did change them," Tyler replied with certainty, "because every time someone decides to love a new person, the whole world gets a little better. And every time someone chooses to care instead of just receiving care, some broken heart somewhere can start to heal," Thomas added. "So you mean we didn't just build our own family but taught other people how to build theirs too?" Margaret smiled. "Exactly," Tyler confirmed. "We've become like love teachers." The simple and accurate description drew laughter from all three. Love teacher was indeed a fitting profession to describe what they had become. "And what's the next step for our love teachers?" Thomas asked. "To keep teaching," Tyler said immediately. "Write more books, hold more events, help more people, but mainly keep being family to each other every day." "Tyler is right," Margaret agreed. "The most important thing isn't the social project we created. It's the love we created between us, and that we managed to keep alive every day." And truly, the real success of their story wasn't in the numbers of people helped by the project, nor in the public recognition they had received, nor even in the official adoption that had legally sealed their bonds. The real success was in the simple, everyday way they had learned to care for each other, in the naturalness with which they had transformed pain into active love, in the courage they found to open themselves again to deep connections after having lost important people. 3 years after that day when Margaret decided to secretly observe what Tyler did in her house, the three of them lived a happy and stable routine. Tyler, now 14, continued to excel in school and had already published 2 books. Thomas had become not just a gardener, but the general manager of the property and an active partner in the social project. Margaret had rediscovered her leadership capacity and was using her business skills to expand the reach of the Heart Family project. More important than all these external successes, they had created a home environment full of love, laughter, mutual growth, and shared purpose. "You know what I like most about our family?" Tyler asked one night during dinner. "What?" Margaret and Thomas asked in unison. "It's that we never stop learning from each other. Dad teaches me about being strong, Mom. Margaret teaches me about dreaming big, and I teach you about seeing magic where adults only see routine," Margaret completed. "That's right. And about remembering that taking care of people is more important than anything else." The synthesis Tyler made of their mutual contributions was perfect. They had truly created a family dynamic where everyone was simultaneously teachers and students, caregivers and cared for. "Tyler," Thomas said, "do you remember what our life was like before we met Mom Margaret?" The boy thought for a moment. "I remember we were always worried about money, worried if I was okay, worried about the future. Now we are always hopeful." "And you, Margaret?" Thomas asked. "What was your life like before you met us?" "It was empty," she replied simply. "I existed, but I didn't live. I had forgotten that existing is not the same as living." "And what's the difference?" Tyler asked, always curious about deep questions. "To exist is just to breathe, eat, sleep, repeat. To live is to care, to love, to learn, to grow, to contribute to other people's happiness." "So you mean we taught each other how to really live?" "Exactly, Tyler. You taught me how to really live." That night, after Tyler went to sleep, Margaret and Thomas stayed talking in the living room, as had become their tradition. "Thomas, I have a question that might sound strange." "Go ahead." "Do you ever regret accepting my proposal to live here?" Thomas looked at her, surprised. Margaret, he still sometimes slipped into formality. "Why are you asking that?" "Because sometimes I wonder if I didn't change your lives in a way you might not have wanted. If maybe you would have preferred to have continued just the two of you." "Margaret, can I answer you with a question?" "Of course." "Do you regret letting us into your life?" Never. You saved me. Then why do you think it would be different for us? You saved us too. How so? Tyler was a boy who was growing up too fast because he had to take care of me too. Now he can be a child when he wants, because he has a mother to share the responsibility of caring for him. Margaret had never thought of it from that perspective. And I, Thomas continued, was a man who was forgetting how to dream because I could only think about surviving. Now I can make plans for the future because I have a partner to build those plans with. Thomas's explanation completely reassured her. She had focused so much on what she was giving to them that she had forgotten to fully recognize what she was receiving in return. Thomas, can I confess something to you? Of course. I love you both in a way I didn't know I was still capable of, and sometimes that scares me. Why does it scare you? Because I've already lost someone I loved very much, and I'm afraid of losing you too. Thomas immediately understood her fear. It was the same fear he had felt when he began to get attached to her and include her in his future plans. Margaret, can I tell you a secret? Go ahead. I'm also afraid sometimes. Afraid that one day you'll get tired of us, or find a better life, or simply change your mind. That will never happen, Thomas. And you losing us will never happen either, because we chose to be family, and choices of the heart are forever. The conversation brought a deep sense of security to both of them. They had verbalized and worked through natural fears that could have grown silently, if not addressed. You know, Thomas, I think we've built something very rare. What? We've built a family where everyone feels safe to be vulnerable, where everyone grows, where everyone contributes and everyone receives. That's true. And we did it without an instruction manual. We did it by following the heart. And truly, the family the three of them had built was an extraordinary example of how deep and healthy bonds can be created when there is genuine intention, mutual care, and a willingness to grow together. 4 years after that first day, when Margaret watched Tyler taking care of her house, she received a phone call that would change their lives again. It was from a publisher in Los Angeles, interested in turning their story and the Hart family project into a commercial book with national reach. "Tyler! Thomas!" she shouted, hanging up the phone. "You won't believe it." When she told them about the publisher's proposal, Tyler literally jumped for joy. "You mean our story can help people all across the United States?" "Exactly. They want us to tell everything, how we met, how we built our family, how we created the social project." "And are we going to write it together?" Thomas asked. "We are, all three of us together, each one telling their part of the story." The book project became a fantastic family adventure. For 6 months they dedicated themselves to remembering, organizing and writing about their experiences. Tyler was responsible for writing about his perceptions as a child, Thomas about his experience as a single father who found a partner to help raise his son, and Margaret about her journey from loneliness to an expanded family. The writing process was deeply reflective for all of them. Putting the story on paper made them realize the magnitude of the transformation they had lived through. "Writing about that first day when you caught me arranging the flowers," Tyler said. "I remembered how nervous I was, but also how sure I was that I was doing the right thing." "And I remembered," Margaret added, "how completely wrong I was about you, but how something inside me already knew you were special, before I even understood why." "I remembered how worried I was about you two getting too attached," Thomas laughed, "without realizing that I was getting attached too, and that it was the best thing that could happen." The book, titled The House That Learned to Love, was launched 8 months later and became an immediate success. Not just for the sales, but for the emotional impact it had on readers. They received hundreds of letters from people who had been inspired by the story to build their own Hart families. Many cities created local versions of the Hart family project, always crediting the original inspiration to the three of them. Tyler, now 15, had become the youngest teenage author to have a book on the country's bestseller list. But more important to him, he had managed to fulfill his dream of using writing to help sad people become happy again. During the book launch tour, which included talks in several cities, the three always took the stage together, demonstrating in practice the united and functional family they had created. The question we get the most, Tyler would say to the audiences, is about what the secret is to building a heart family. And the answer is simple. There is no secret. There is only the decision to care for someone even when you're not obligated to, and the courage to let someone care for you even when you're not used to it. The talks always ended with emotional autograph sessions, where people shared their own stories of loss and loneliness, but also their renewed hopes after learning the story of the three. One of the most touching letters they received was from a 75-year-old lady who had lost her husband and was living in isolation. Dear Richardson family, your book changed my life. After reading about you, I found the courage to reach out to my neighbor who is also a widow, and today we care for each other like sisters. We built our own heart family, inspired by you. Thank you for showing us that it's never too late to love and be loved again. Tyler, Margaret said after reading the letter, do you realize that your first idea, to secretly care for a sad lady's house, turned into a movement that is changing lives across the entire country? We realize, Tyler corrected. Because I only had the idea. You helped me turn the idea into reality. The humility and generosity that Tyler maintained, even with all the recognition he received, continued to surprise everyone around him. At 15, he already demonstrated extraordinary emotional maturity and social wisdom, but he had never lost the caring and nurturing essence that had characterized him since childhood. 5 years after that day, which had changed their lives forever, Margaret, Thomas, and Tyler were living a reality none of the three could have imagined. Margaret had transformed from an isolated, bitter widow into a fulfilled woman, with a clear life purpose and a family that loved her unconditionally. Thomas had evolved from a single father, struggling to survive, into a solid family partnership and a meaningful professional project. Tyler had grown from a motherless boy into a nationally recognized young writer and an inspiring social activist. But most importantly, they had kept intact the essential qualities that had initially brought them together: mutual care, emotional honesty, the willingness to grow together, and the ability to transform pain into active love. You know what I admire most about our family? Margaret said one afternoon as the three of them tended to the memory garden. It's that we never stopped surprising each other. How so? Tyler asked. Like this. 5 years later, I still discover new things about you two. I'm still moved by the caring gestures you make. I still learn things about life and love through conversations with you. It's true, Thomas agreed. We never fell into the routine of taking each other for granted. We still cultivate love every day. And we still talk to Mom and Mr. Charles, Tyler added. They're still part of our family, just in a different way. The ability the three of them had developed to honor the past without being trapped by it was one of the healthiest aspects of their family dynamic. Charles and Susan were constant presences in their lives, but as inspirations for love, not as obstacles to new bonds. Tyler, Margaret said, do you still talk to them every day? I do. Now I tell them about the book, about the lectures, about how happy you both are, and sometimes I ask them for advice on things I don't know how to solve. And what kind of answer do you think they'd give? Mom would tell me to always remember to be kind to people, because everyone is fighting battles we can't see. And Charles would tell me to take good care of you two, because family is the most precious treasure there is. The answers Tyler imagined for Charles and his mother were always consistent with what Margaret and Thomas remembered of their personalities. It was as if he had developed a real connection with the memories they shared about the deceased. Tyler, can I ask you a question that might seem strange? Of course, Mom. It was the first time Tyler had called her naturally Mom in a casual conversation without a formal occasion. The word slipped out so naturally he didn't even notice, but Margaret felt a deep emotion upon hearing it. Do you think your mother and Charles actually met each other there where they are? Tyler smiled. I'm sure they did, and I'm sure they're very happy to see that we've built such a beautiful family with the love they planted inside each of us. Tyler's answer was both poetically beautiful and emotionally comforting. He had found a way to integrate his personal spiritual beliefs with the practical reality of his earthly family. And what do you think they'd say about our social project? Thomas asked. I think they'd say we hit the nail on the head, that love is meant to be multiplied, not kept, and that the best way to honor those we love is to spread the kind of love they taught us. Once again, Tyler demonstrated his extraordinary ability to transform abstract concepts into practical, applicable life philosophies. That night, the three of them took an informal assessment of everything they had achieved together. Not just the external, visible successes, but especially the internal transformations and personal growth each had experienced. When I think of the person I was 5 years ago, Margaret reflected, it's like a completely different life. It's not just that I was sad or alone, it's that I had forgotten who I really was inside. How so? Tyler asked. I had forgotten that I like to take care of people, that I like to teach and to learn, that I like to laugh and to make plans for the future. You two reminded me of who I've always been deep down. And I, Thomas added, had forgotten that I could trust other people to help me take care of Tyler. I had forgotten that accepting help isn't weakness, it's intelligence. And I learned, Tyler concluded, that losing an important person doesn't mean losing the ability to love new people. I learned that the heart has infinite space, and that the more we love, the more space it has. The reflections of the three revealed the depth of the transformations they had lived. They weren't just changes in circumstance, but fundamental evolutions of personality and life perspective. You know what I think is the most incredible thing about our whole story? Margaret asked. What? Father and son answered together. It's that each of us found exactly what we needed in the other two. Tyler needed stability and a maternal figure. Thomas needed a partner to share raising his son. I needed purpose and a family to love. It was a perfect match. It's like we were puzzle pieces that fit together perfectly, Tyler observed. Exactly. And the most beautiful part is that we not only completed each other, but we multiplied. The love we built between us became greater than the sum of its parts. And truly, the family the three had created was a perfect example of how healthy relationships can be mutually enriching, where each person becomes more themselves through the love and care they receive from others. 6 years after that transformative day, Tyler was graduating from high school as the top student in his class. Besides excellent grades, he had been accepted into a special young writers program at a prestigious university. Mom, Dad, he said during dinner the night before graduation, I want to thank you for everything you've done for me. Tyler, you don't need to thank us for anything, Margaret replied. You gave us much more than you received. That's not true, Mom. You gave me a family, stability, education, opportunities I never would have had alone with my father. But more than that, you taught me it's possible to turn any difficult situation into a beautiful story. Tyler's maturity and gratitude continued to impress. At 17, he had already developed a deeply wise and generous perspective on life. Tyler, Thomas said, what's your biggest dream for the future now? To keep writing books that help people build heart families, to expand our project to other countries, and most importantly, to never lose our unity no matter what success we have out there. That will never happen, Margaret assured. Because we learned that true success isn't in individual achievements, it's in the ability to maintain solid bonds of love. And because, Thomas added, we built a family based on values, not convenience. And values don't change with time or circumstances. On the night of Tyler's graduation, Margaret and Thomas felt proud not only of his academic achievements, but mainly of the honest and compassionate young man they had helped shape together. During the graduation speech, Tyler was chosen to represent the class. His speech was about family, gratitude, and purpose. 6 years ago, I was a boy who had lost his mother and lived in a small room with my father. Today, I graduate as the result of the love of 3 people. My father, who taught me about honor and hard work. My heart mother, who taught me about big dreams and generosity. And my original mother, who even though she's no longer here physically, continues to teach me through the beautiful memories she left behind. He paused for a moment, looking at Margaret and Thomas in the audience. I learned that family is a daily choice to care for each other, no matter what difficulties arise. I learned that love doesn't diminish when it's shared, but multiplies. And I learned that each of us has the power to turn a sad person into a happy person, simply by deciding to care. The speech received a warm ovation from the entire audience. Many parents present were visibly moved, and some approached Margaret and Thomas after the ceremony to congratulate them on Tyler's extraordinary upbringing. "You did a wonderful job with that boy," said one mother. "He is an exceptional young man." "Actually," Margaret replied, "he educated us. We only provided the environment for him to flourish." And truly, although Margaret and Thomas provided stability, opportunities, and much love for Tyler, the exceptional qualities he demonstrated were genuinely his: the compassion, the emotional wisdom, the writing talent, the leadership ability. They had been the careful gardeners of a plant that already carried within itself all the potential to be extraordinary. After graduation, Tyler was accepted into a special university program that allowed him to study and work simultaneously on social impact projects. He could continue living at home and developing the Hart Family Project while completing his formal education. "Tyler," Margaret said, "are you sure you don't want to live on the university campus? Have the complete young college student experience?" "I'm sure, Mom. My family is here, my work is here, my life is here. I don't want the traditional college experience. I want to build a meaningful life together with the people I love." Tyler's response demonstrated how the family values that had been cultivated over the years had become an integral part of his personality. He didn't see family as an obstacle to his independence, but as the foundation that allowed him to pursue his dreams with security and purpose. "Besides," he added, smiling, "do you really think I could manage to live far from Mom's garden and Mr. Charles, far from our kitchen conversations every night, far from seeing you two happy every day?" Tyler's loyalty and affection for his family continued to be deep and genuine, even as he gained more independence and personal recognition. 7 years after that day that had changed everything, the life of the Richardson family had achieved a perfect balance between stability and growth, between tradition and innovation, between public success and private happiness. The Hart Family Project had expanded to 15 American cities and was being adapted in 3 North American countries. Tyler had become an internationally recognized social activist, but kept his base at home, always working in partnership with Margaret and Thomas. Margaret had rediscovered not only her capacity to love and be loved, but also her talent for social leadership and her life purpose. Thomas had evolved from gardener to general manager of a social organization with national impact. But most important of all, the three had kept intact the quality of the relationships that united them. They still had dinner together every night. They still took care of the memory garden together every weekend. They still talked about everything, from trivial matters to important decisions. "You know what I realize when I look back?" Tyler said one afternoon while they were organizing materials for a new project event. "What?" Margaret and Thomas asked. "That we never tried to change each other. We only offered love and space for each person to be the best version of themselves." Tyler's observation was profoundly true. Throughout all these years, none of the three had tried to mold the others according to their personal expectations. Instead, each had offered unconditional support so the others could discover and develop their own talents and personalities. "That's why we worked out," Margaret reflected, "because we based our family on acceptance and encouragement, not on demands and conditions. And because we always remembered that each of us is a gift to the others," Thomas added. "We never forgot to value what we have." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this moving story and where you are listening from. What touched you most in the journey of Margaret, Thomas, and Tyler? Do you believe it's possible to build heart families in real life? Leave your sincere opinion in the comments. Thank you very much for the company. And don't forget to leave your like and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.